I found what appeared to be a room floating by itself off in the distance. This was particularly interesting to me because most of this out-of-bounds junk lacks collision and can't be found in the viewer. I tried to locate it in-game, but found nothing I could see out there. At first, the displayed coordinates on the NoClip website didn't seem to help me locate it, but then I realized that dividing those coordinates by 20 would give us the numbers that we needed to punch into the cheat engine to teleport there. I was hoping I could make contact with the collision to see this room, but instead, this happens. So the room sadly does not appear to have a remaining visual component, but its collision, for whatever reason, de-renders most of the rest of the level and only renders the room outside Mythos Arena. I proceeded to drop a bunch of prism stones on it to help visualize it somewhat. What was the purpose of this room and why is it all the way out here is anyone's guess.
It's enemy spotted from here.
Okay, let's take a look at some things in Medulla. One of the first really cool out-of-bounds discoveries in this game was the lore vessel from Dark Souls 1. In the mansion's basement, you'll find shards of the broken lore vessel, while an intact one can be found above the ceiling nearby. Credit to Master Axon on Reddit for sharing this with the community all those years back. They also pointed out how you can see more to the world map, but it's just repeating parts you can already see normally. Something I recently found was another curious remnant of a discarded path. Below you enter the rotunda, so you have to go out of bounds for it. In the distance you'll find this weird sort of box of geography. It has an entrance to it, and it contains a cave path inside. I tried to determine if it was something like an incomplete log of an already existing path in an upcoming story, but revisiting those coordinates when the Huntsman's Copse is loaded puts us out here. And checking the same coordinates from the Earthen Peak puts us over here. So yeah, it does appear to just be a random piece of floating cave that's not used anywhere else. I alluded to some cut content earlier, and what I was talking about was how Dark Souls 2 has a bunch of unused map pieces. I'm not going to go into all of that here since there's so much of it, and that should be its own discussion. But I just want to quickly point out how, with that content restored, we see another similar set piece out here beyond the normal outbounds one.
Watch out! Over here! Creating a safe zone!
Okay, so let's make sense of some of the distant views in the skyboxes. Over in this direction, we have the Forest of Fallen Giants. The land it resides on is three-dimensional, but the buildings set on top are two-dimensional. They're layered and angled, so it's not all perfectly flat, but it's still a series of cardboard cuttings, essentially. We can recognize some familiar elements out here. Let's start with the structure on the right. This is the Cardinal Tower, which is the building that houses that main sort of bonfire. If it doesn't look too familiar from this angle, we can recreate that angle by positioning ourselves nearby out of bounds.
The Kingfish have returned to the arena.
Steal cash out A!
We see a darker patch on the top right of the building, which represents the tree leaves here. We see the branches climbing up the side of the building, and over to the right we see the walkway with the rubble on top of it. The tower's placement next to this other structure is kind of legit, which is cool to see. This giant statue is the same one that we see after the pursuer boss fight by the bird's nest. We get to see the backside from Medulla, which we don't normally get to see from anywhere up close. But we can explore the backside here to take another look, and we can see that it is fully textured from here. And going further out can help clarify its positioning relative to Cardinal Tower. Okay, I know we still have more things to look at in Medulla, but while we're out here, we might as well take a look at the nearby parts of the environment we aren't meant to reach. There's a surprising amount of detail to the rubble map. We have a roof that's collapsed, with a room underneath it, and that room has walls textured on all sides.
Raising a shield!
And we also have the broken tower over here.
Unlocking Vault 2.
Let's go for Vault 2. On your tail!
Charge to cash out B!
Right!
Back to Medulla. Looking again at the Forest of Fallen Giants skybox, there's something of interest in one of the layers that's further back. I can bottom of it, we see something strange. We see two sets of whatever that is, among some otherwise generic trees and mountains. I was trying to figure out what they meant to convey with that, until I recognized that it looked a lot like the top of the first tower near the first bonfire. It doesn't really make sense, since it puts it really far from the other structures here, but you also can't see it from anywhere in bounds normally anyways. So it seems kind of like a discarded experiment in trying to represent the forced to fall giants from a distance. Okay, so turning around completely, you can see Hyde's tower in flank. Once again, the distance is exaggerated from its actual location. Up close we can see it's a 2D texture that's angled back a bit. It is comprised of actual elements of the level, arranged in the way that we would expect. We find the Tower of Flame off to the right, and the Cathedral of Bloom, where you fight the old Dragon Slayer, on the left. We can also look at the various ruins lining the hilltops straight ahead. There's some segments of walls out here, and some loose columns. There's also some specific scenery we can recognize. We have this round building, which represents the round building just around the corner by Benhart View. Further straight back, we have the viaduct that runs through the shaded woods. And we also have a 2D representation of Drangleic Castle. But perhaps the most interesting thing to me back here is this particular structure that's off to the right. It's not just more random walls like the other pieces nearby, but it's a direct copy of the set piece that contains the shaded ruins bonfire. You can see that it's shaped the same, and it also includes the window space on the backside near the bonfire. Lastly, something else we can only see if we go out of bounds is something hiding beyond and to the left of the Forest of Fallen Giants. Way back here, there's another building of some kind. My theory is that it's meant to be the Undead Crypt, but that's a subject of discussion for the world layout video I'll do later on. As the game progresses, the game starts to make less and less of an effort to telegraph upcoming or previous areas. Apart from the shaded woods, including Drangleic Castle in the distance, Hyde's Tower of Flame is one of the few locations we can look back and see a meaningful amount of distant stuff. We can see the monument to Dracula and the Forest of Fallen Giants behind us. Here's a closer look at the monument.
Setting a mine.
And here's the Forest of Fallen Giants once again. We see the same textures used for the buildings here, although the surrounding skybox and distant terrain is different than its depiction from Dracula. And something a bit odd here, but there's a square void in the sea not far from the Dracula monument. It's normally hidden behind a cliff wall here. We can use the Clue map viewer to find the true locations of the Blue Sentinels arenas